Welcome to the Growth Fire Podcast, where we engage with top business leaders who share their experiences and provide real insights that help them attract customers, retain staff, and grow their bottom line. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi there, I'm Kevin Horrigan, host of the show, where I feature inspired business leaders from various backgrounds and industries who are willing to share their insights and their stories. Today's podcast is brought to you by Spinutech. Spinutech is a leading digital advertising agency who helps their clients attract new business, grow existing business, and ultimately help those companies be more successful. Thank you, Spinutech, for your partnership today. Well, today's guest is Scott Price. Scott is founder and CEO of A-LIGN. A-LIGN is a technology-enabled security and compliance partner trusted by more than 2,400 organizations globally to confidentially mitigate cybersecurity risks. They work with small businesses to global enterprises with services spanning across many regulatory and compliance requirements. Scott is also a well-recognized leader, being recognized by the Florida State University Business Hall of Fame, finalist for Ernst & Young's 2021 Entrepreneur of the Year, as well as serving many not-for-profits, including the Junior League and the Humane Society of Tampa Bay. Scott, welcome to the Growth Fire Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Absolutely. So Scott, we've known each other for a long period of time, but please tell our audience a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what you studied in school, maybe what you aspired to be when you were growing up for what your career would become, and a little bit more about yourself.
That sounds great. Happy to do so. I've always aspired to be in better physical condition than you, but I won't achieve that one. So I'll start a little bit about myself. I grew up in Clearwater, Florida, attended Florida State University. It's where my parents went to school there. I think there's 6 of us now who have accounting degrees from Florida State University. And I never thought that I would grow up to be a cybersecurity consultant. I majored in accountancy. However, my first love was arguing with my parents in high school. And so I actually was a pre-law major for a period of time. And then I thought I wanted to go into nursing home abuse and neglect because I had a grandmother who had gone through some of that stuff. But the hospitality program at FSU, you had to spend 1,000 hours of an internship or in the hospitality program. And I thought about waiting tables and thank goodness there's people that do those jobs and everything else. And I said I did not want to do that. So I went into accounting, figured it put food on the table growing up and let's see what I can do. I got my master's degree in taxation because I thought I could save money in my own personal taxes. There's a theme here of wanting to not work that hard and make a lot of money over that time. And that was that was exactly what I thought I was going to do and started Arthur Andersen in 1997 out of Florida State University here in Tampa.
Oh, that's awesome, Scott. What a story. Scott, growing up, did you have any jobs as a teenager?
Yeah, working and being an entrepreneur, I think was always in my blood. Whether it was, I would have my parents buy candy at the Costco, and then I would resell it in middle school. And selling candy in middle school was was a crime ring operation. But I was able to do that. I bought and sold baseball cards, and then when I became old enough to have a job, I started bagging groceries at Jewel-Osco. And then when Publix could hire me, I started at Publix and I worked there 6 years and even was on their tuition reimbursement program as well. And so
wow.
I loved doing that job. Worked about 35 hours a week in high school.
Wow.
I enjoyed working. I think, yourself and myself and others that start companies and you just have this unending desire to work hard. And that's always been something I remember race around in the parking lot during my cart hour running, trying to see how many carts I could collect in that hour and keep track of that.
So it sounds like there's a competitive streak in you as well.
Exactly. Like I said, I one day I'll be as fast as you in good shape, but I think soon.
Yeah. Be careful what you ask for. So Scott, you talk about, you love to debate with your parents as you were a teenager. I think we all do that, but you made you consider a law degree. And then, you looked at some other types of things and, found yourself into what you're doing right now, but you never saw yourself as becoming an owner of a cybersecurity business. Can you talk a little bit about what helped you go from the great job you got out of college into deciding to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think, nowadays, what people may have 7 different jobs or careers, before they finish, and no, very different than our parents were. When I started Arthur Andersen, I started in financial audit. And at that time, they were looking at the entire company as an organization to audit. And I got placed on some of the technology companies that were very rare back in Tampa at that time, and looked at the technology that they had and started learning about that and said, wow, it's really neat to see that the numbers end up somewhere, but how's the technology drive where the numbers are going to be from? And so that was really important to me to go through that process. And so after 9 months, I switched from financial audit over to technology audit. As I tell people, technology is very different in 1997, as you know as well. But it was starting from ground zero. And so it was something that I looked at where the world was going and how much technology was playing in the role of business. And I wanted to be part of the business transaction rather than reporting on the business transaction.
Wow, what a great journey. So you're reporting on it, but started getting fascinated about the actual operations of it and the opportunity of it. And certainly when I think about it, timing of 1997, the cusp of what was on the horizon and maybe the energy of what was on the horizon, we're 3 years away from the .com, as we talked about it. There had to be just a voracious amount of energy that was taking place at all that time. What was the trigger point that took you from auditor to entrepreneur?
Yeah, it was not anything I planned for. As you know me, Kevin, I love planning and planning things out. And I had a lifetime budget. I was going to be at Arthur Andersen, make partner, and then retire after 8 years of being partner. I had a lifetime budget all scheduled out. And then Enron hit, obviously, with Arthur Andersen. Yep. And, you saw how fragile the firm was, that entire countries are not part of Arthur Andersen anymore. Right. And so many of our group and our technology consulting group, I was the most senior non-partner that they had in Florida. And I wanted to continue the type of cybersecurity audits that I was doing, and the new company that they were selling us off to wasn't going to continue to be able to do those. So I went with my pay stub over to another large accounting firm, and they said, pay you what you're making, with your pay stub. And I said, but wait a minute, I have this whole book of business I'm bringing you. And as with me, sales and lead gen is important. And I said, how about you pay me a percentage of what business I bring you? They said, no, this is what we do. We pay you your pay stub, bring it over. And so I left at 26 and started my own firm, doing a lot of things that I loved before at Arthur Andersen, but some of the things that I thought I could enhance the employee experience and the customer experience, more importantly. And so at 26 and one credit card that had no balance on it, had a $5,000 limit, I started my first company.
Wow, that's a great story. And I think, Scott, some of the things we see in common in the Growth Fire podcast is entrepreneurship may have been something that was being created in many different experiences. But like you said, you love to plan your work and work your plan. I love to plan my work and work my plan. But sometimes without a plan, the biggest opportunities present themselves. And I see so many parallels in other guests of the Growth Fire podcast. Their venture into what has really propelled them into significant growth wasn't an intentional plan. It was an opportunity that usually came out of an adversity or something that didn't go to plan. And you're certainly another person out there who Enron, what happened to Arthur Andersen and all of that stuff. But you saw it as opportunity, not adversity. And tell us a little bit about that company and the growth that you've had with that.
Yeah, that was I always thought, if this fails, I can go back and get a job somewhere else.
Right.
But this is an opportunity, as you said, you look at the adversity. At that time, I was 26 years old, didn't have any too many mouths to worry about, right. As well. And so we started out, and I remember we got our first 2 clients, and if we had split that income, we would have made what we had made the prior year. And I said, this is something special. And so we grew the company up to about 11 million in revenue. We had about 38 employees, learned a lot about growing a company, very focused on the sales and marketing efforts of the company. I think that's the tip of the spear that I like to be on. Right. And then in 2009, after 7 years, sort of reflected on what I had done and where I wanted to take the company, which was different from my partner at that time.
Yep. And so, Scott, so you obviously chose to do some different things and then go into eventually do what you're doing today. You've been, part of your growth has been organic and part of your growth is through acquisition. I've seen your journey through both sides of it. But before we get into the acquisition side, I've always respected your approach to organic growth and your discipline around, the intensity, the intentional and intensity of your marketing and sales plan. Can you talk about as an entrepreneur, CEO, but having to be very active in marketing and in sales? Can you tell us how you led your organization, being the CEO, but maybe also wearing the hat of Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Sales Officer? Can you talk a little bit about what your role was and how you led the company as not only CEO, but maybe CSO, Chief Sales Officer?
Yeah, I think the CEO really develops the brand and the DNA of the company. And when you think about the brand, you think about marketing of the company. And whatever that messaging is you're going to have in the marketplace, better have the CEO lead that or shape it early on.
Yes.
And so I determined that it was a math equation. I looked at it as a CPA and said, if I look at the number of leads that I can get, I convert those leads into opportunities. I apply a win rate times an average contract value that will yield this opportunity. And I sometimes say revenue solves all problems. That's not always true, but when you have revenue, you've got one less problem to worry about.
Right.
And so I focused around how the leads can come in. So we think about lead source and lead channel and really be intentional about how much I need from each one, what activities I'm going to be doing. And I think CEOs looking at the ROI, when I'm going out to a conference, is the purpose of this conference to go generate new business or meet with existing customers? Or is it branding? Or is it influencing somebody else in the regulatory industry? And so you can say out of each of these conferences, what's my goal? What objectives do I have to measure against that goal? And then what's that ROI that I'm achieving? And I looked at it in each of those ways of how I'm spending my money and then determining what's my cost per opportunity. Right. And I looked at it to say, where am I going to generate the most opportunity through inbound or outbound demand gen, conferences, things of that nature. I think that intentionality is so important to ensure that you're measuring the right activity. And I wasn't right all the time. Let's face it. A lot of conferences I went to didn't yield what we thought, but then I knew it was a bad strategy, was a bad execution, and you could pinpoint it and then redirect those dollars in the future. And then I think it's important from the sales side to hear from the customer and ask questions. I think a lot of times as CEOs, we pontificate a lot and speak and take up air in the room, but asking the question of the customer, who else are you considering? Why are you looking to switch? What are the attributes you look for in a good provider? What do you like about your current provider? What do you not like? Who else are you considering? I think sometimes people get scared about hearing that there's competition out there, but in today's age of how much data you can get to so quickly, you should expect that the buyer is so far along, as you know, Kevin, from your work down the buying journey, that they've got to be considering multiple vendors for the solution.
Yes. Yeah. And to your point, they're so educated before they even speak to you, right? They've already done the research. They're probably speaking to you because whatever they've been able to research you from their online research, they've vetted you to the point where they want to have a conversation, but rarely are they the only one having that conversation with, right? And so you do need to, having the opportunity to understand what makes you different and leveraging that and why they're considering others, why they're leaving their current provider, all very helpful in making sure there's alignment and things of that nature. Scott, so you were Chief Sales Officer and CEO together. You're creating these plans and you've got these different avenues of which you think you're going to generate the volume of leads and the conversion rate out of those leads. And I appreciate you saying, I wasn't always perfect at what I assumed or planned these things to be. We never are. It's easy to put a plan on paper. It's hard to execute a plan to get to the outcome. How did you adjust for the areas that didn't meet what you were expecting them to be? And did you get frustrated at those things, or were you able to not get frustrated?
Well, I think anytime there's not success, you become frustrated. But I always say I look for two things when I hire people: that they like to learn and they care. I think, if you care in a failure, you want to learn from it. And I think that's what I did as we did these other conferences. We go to a particular conference and it wouldn't generate the lead flow that we expected. You look at an ad and a performance of a PPC ad or something on LinkedIn, it didn't generate what we thought. You look at the marketplace as you segment it. I think it's so important for that to happen. For instance, we thought this year in a downward economy, sometimes the enterprise level that we usually don't service comes down to be able to look at us. Yes. Our enterprise sales have gone down. And why is that then year over year? Is it because we didn't do a good enough job of being in front of the customer? I think during COVID and how people got away from being in front of customers affects that relationship side of it. And we need to really make sure our sales relational, not transactional. And
Yes.
so I think some of these things that I say are clearly through the failures that I've had, and
Yes.
you get frustrated about them because you lost time, and that's the important thing. And when you lead this, you're the CEO, you're responsible for the time that people are spending on projects ultimately. And so you want to make sure you're using good use of their time and they're feeling valued for their time.
Right.
And that's why I want to make certain that what we're doing is correct. And usually that comes with firing some bullets before the cannon fire. Kevin, it's let's try some things on a test basis, as A/B testing, things of that nature. And then we can put all of our money on a certain pathway forward because we think it makes the most sense for success.
Is that phrase "fire some bullets before the cannons fire"? Is that what I just heard?
Yes.
Can we coin that for later?
Definitely.
Fire some bullets before the cannons fire. I like that. That's a great.
Yeah.
So Scott, eventually, as the company continued to scale and grow, you decided to start to delegate some of the responsibilities for sales and marketing. Can you talk about the transition, Ben, being super actively involved in leading some of that to, what made you decide that the company would benefit from delegating this down? And can you tell us a little bit about your journey in that process?
Yeah, Kevin, it came from, once again, a learning experience. As A-LIGN grew and wanted validation, I knew going out to the marketplace and looking for private equity sponsorship would be one way to do that. When you are chief executive officer, chief sales officer, and chief marketing officer, and you're focusing, going through due diligence, something's got to give.
Right.
And unfortunately for us, it was the sales, because the head of sales was focused on the deal.
Right.
And we actually initially were retraded from a pricing standpoint. And I said, I can't do it all anymore. We're at the scale where we need somebody who has been trained for 20 years in sales and knows exactly how to do it and set up a sales organization, comp models, et cetera. And so that was something that I brought a person in to do that. They did a great job at that stage of our organization to be able to handle that role. I think I will never leave the tip of the spear. I think entrepreneurs, a lot of times, they want to go do this because they don't want a governor or a limit on what their success can be.
Sure.
And so I'm still attend every weekly go-to-market call and give my 2 cents for sure.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love the energy. And you got the experience and insight. Well, you said you brought in a 20-year leader. You probably didn't have 20 years experience at that time, but you had A-LIGN's experience. And you said obviously at the CEO role, like you're really setting the stage of how to go to market, present the company to prospects, hear from those prospects, do some of that nature. And so it sounds like you're partnering with someone who's got the prior leadership of the sales organization experience or marketing, but you're still bringing that branding and that company passion to the table to help complement what they're doing.
The expertise and I've had great sales leaders over the years, and one of their comments are it's interesting working for an accountant because the numbers take a lot of emotion out of decision making. That's what I always say about numbers. And so we look at the numbers, we decide where to go with it. I think though also because I had such a confident leader and still do in my delivery and my services, I was able really to spend more time in that sales and marketing focus for me, which was helpful as I grew that sales leader into the A-LIGN knowledge.
So you're super comfortable with your operations side of the house, which allowed you as the CEO to go where you felt like you needed to spend your time. And you were able to contribute that time, knowing that you had a delivery partner leading the organization there too, and give you that comfort level. Exactly. Yeah. Scott, you just said something else just a moment ago too, and you said some of your sales leaders joked with you. You said something about working for an accountant and the sales side of that. Could you repeat that again? That was worth hearing a second time.
Yeah. So the sales leaders always say that they didn't realize how tough it was going to be working for an accountant in a sales role, because I tell them numbers take all emotion out of decision making. Yes. So we lay it out there, we lay out our assumptions, and then we take the emotion out of it to make the decision of what's going to benefit the enterprise. I always say what's good for A-LIGN is what's good for Scott Price or whatever that leader is, and that's been that's sort of the North Star for it. And we look at those numbers and figure out where we're going to spend our time. And I think where some emotion comes into is you make some bets. And so let's say if you kept doing what you're doing, you're spending $1 in marketing or lead gen, you're going to get $1.10. You always know that's going to happen that way. But if you go, you know what, if I ratchet that down to 70 cents and then I make 5 5-cent bets, I may end up with $1.25.
Right.
And we take some of those, that experience, that emotion does, take place on those experimental bets, let's call them.
Yes.
But you can always keep doing what you're doing, and this is what it's going to be. But I think, one of our values is innovate constantly as a company.
Yes.
And that's not innovation. We need to take some chances.
And it's interesting when you said, we use data to eliminate some of the emotion side of things. My first thought process when you're saying emotion is obviously there's human side of all of this. And, sometimes not everybody's a fit for being part of the organization. And I was thinking the people side, but I didn't realize what you also were implying, and maybe more implying, is we get emotionally attached to our own ideas, and they're not always the best ideas, or we don't want to let go of that idea, or we still believe it could be successful, but maybe it's for the organization's best interest that we just punt and go on so forward. And so I think emotions isn't just on people's side of things, but it's also our ideas that maybe haven't worked out and being able to let go of those. And like you said earlier, learn from them, not forget them. But maybe it's the organization's best interest to let that one go, even though you're personally still want to see it through to the end. It maybe not be what's best for the company.
Yeah. And I think entrepreneurs, Kevin, have to look at it and go, I say to them, prove my idea wrong, not because I'm arrogant about it or I want them to come at me about it, but don't let my title as the CEO mean that my idea is the best idea. Sure. If you lay it out from a numbers perspective and show me why this idea makes sense, I want that challenge. I want that innovation. I want that debate and that diverse opinion and thoughts. And I want them to feel comfortable coming to me with the fact that my idea is not the best one. Here's the best one, Scott, that we should do. It's actually the head of sales, the head of marketing, head of delivery, whoever that is.
No, and that's great too. I mean, obviously to be able to work with, I think we always hear, we want to work with people who are smarter than we are, right? And so we don't want them to tell us that we're right and not really feel that way. We want to empower people to what they're brought to the organization for. And that's how we get our growth, is making that delegation to, like you said earlier, someone with 20 years of experience that you didn't have, being able to delegate and go focus on some other areas as you were looking to do some acquisition growth on top of the organic growth. And that's how you were able to make that decision. And I want to move into that area. So you made a decision to do some, acquisition growth and things of that nature. And you repeated that process a couple of times over. Can you just tell us a little bit about, going from being, probably a significant shareholder into bringing in some private equity partners, and tell us just a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, no, happy to. I think I never thought that I would have brought private equity into the organization. I say there's some regrets that I have about the business, and one of them is not bringing in private equity sooner. The opportunities that we've been afforded by having private equity have been numerous. We wanted validation for the company. I knew how good the company was, and the employees knew, but I wanted them to have an outside third party know how good the company was. Now, sure, we have great clients, but when people put money into a company and feel vested in it, they're making the same bets, and they say they believe in the company. We brought our first private equity firm in 2018, which was a year after this failed transaction that we did not transact. Right. And got a great partner who is a growth partner focused on the growth of the company. But I said I learned how to be a CEO during that time. The metrics involved, the leaders that their name brought in to me as an organization of a new CFO, a new CRO, things of that nature were tremendous for us. And then just being around other CEOs that are in private equity portfolio companies and sharing the experiences, because there's a lifespan a lot of the times in these private equity. Could be 4 to 6 years. I think I did that, and I immediately asked the private equity firm, what's your goal of when you want to get out? Not because I didn't want them out, but I think entrepreneurs always know what their goal is, of how much money they want to make or what they want to do as an organization. I wanted to know, private equity, how much money do you want to make? Because when I get to that valuation, I have optionality. That means I can determine largely when we should transact, because I had a great partner who took me through that. We did that after 37 months. It was the right time for us to either reinvest or transact. And we were at the high end of the market, and we went out again. You learn a lot the second time when you have a private equity firm on your side going out versus you're the one who's having to drive the whole process.
Right.
And we went through that again and had great interest in the organization. We partnered this time with Warburg Pincus. It's been 2 years now. And, Tim Geithner was Secretary of the Treasury under President Obama, moved up to chairman from president of Warburg Pincus, and the relationships that you get, the insight and the access to individuals. And it's not just me, but for the leaders in our firm to get access to them, to make them better at their jobs, and the self-confidence that they gain from that is something that I take a lot of joy in watching them grow as leaders also. And it, you learn how you have to, bring people along with the journey and have monthly financial calls and, things of that nature. You're not in the driver's seat anymore. It's not just you got to answer to your spouse about the financials, but you answer to others as well. And I think that regimented process for me has definitely made me into a better business operator.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing up too that the growth isn't just about the company's sales or revenues or EBITDA. You talked about people growth, and I watched your body language, the expression on your face. You can see a genuine smile about watching these other leaders that your private equity relationship partners have been able to bring to the table, and not just you benefiting and how to become a better CEO, but your entire leadership team's had an opportunity to get rubbed off on, so to speak, by these people and watching them grow, and how exciting it is for you to be able to see that career growth, which is only helping them and their journey too. And, growth is, not just numbers related. It's about the opportunity to get better every day, which is a value we have at Spinutech, get better every day. And the better we get, the better our company gets. And so, developing people is a huge component about, growth and, part of what Growth Fire is all about. And it's interesting to see, how you share, that association is helping people grow. And, I once learned an old saying by one of my mentors, Kevin, you are who you hang with the right people. And it sounds like you've brought in the right partners who hanging with them has helped your growth, your leadership growth, which ultimately resulted in your company's growth.
It is. I think, one of the things for the Growth Fire podcast is around purposeful growth. And I think that's what I learned with the first private equity firm and going through COVID, that we could actually change some of our pricing. And the old adage of, work smarter, not harder, actually came to bear. We were able to change some of our pricing. We had clients become clients that were the right companies for us to attract, which then results in the right metrics and earnings potential for our company. Yes. And then you sort of see, oh my gosh, I don't have to grow at all costs.
Right.
But purpose makes a lot of sense. And I can understand, again, the taking the emotion and the numbers and taking the emotion out of decision-making. We actually saw if we kept the pricing lower, we generated less EBITDA because we had all this additional infrastructure we needed to bring on additional clients. And so that's what I learned about purposeful growth. Because I think as an entrepreneur, you think, growing people and growing offices and growing clients is the end all be all. And I think about purposeful growth and sort of been on that journey for the last few years.
And Scott, as you were, describing what you meant by purposeful growth, I was immediately thinking about the non-emotional side of what that probably involved. And you did bring that up, but I think the personal growth is probably, again, having to let go of some of the past concepts you had of growing at all costs. That mean more offices, that mean more customers. And so I like that purposeful component to it, because it sounds like the math exercise you did saw a change in something that would have been different than how you conceptually looked at things earlier, but you were able to emotionally let go because you rationally saw a different approach that's supported by some numbers and gave you the faith to move forward, even though it was against probably what your prior headset was fighting for.
No doubt about it. It like I said, I want to get proved wrong sometime, and I sure did that time for sure.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it's great to see the honesty too and the candidness. Scott, maybe just a couple more questions. There's a lot of business owners who listen to these podcasts or watch these podcasts, and we're all in some databases that we're getting phone calls from private equity companies all the time saying they got this amazing opportunity for us. Can you give any insight as to when how to prepare for those phone calls, or when you should really take those phone calls, or when you tell them you're not ready yet?
I think there's always an opportunity to learn. And so I think, while you think it may be too early, and I think coming out and telling a private equity firm, it may be too early. And here's why: because you know what you want to do as an organization first and foremost, and where you want to get to, and what type of partner you're looking for. I joke, I started in the morning in New York at breakfast, and I got, chewed up and spit out in the morning. And by dinner time, my presentation at dinner was very different than it was in the morning. I was crisp and clear. I knew exactly what I wanted to say, what type of partner I wanted to partner with as well. So I do think it makes sense to take some of those calls, and it may not be the person you end up with, but it's the person that you can learn from and they can learn from as well.
Right.
And then determining, when is the right time? Like I said, for us, I wish I would have done it sooner.
Right.
I think I've done 2 turns now, and we'll be coming up on our third in the next couple of years. I think every time you learn something new, every time there's plenty of opportunities for the company. And that's the whole thing. It's about opportunities. Whether it's through an acquisition of a company that you're bringing in and giving their people opportunities, or the people that have grown with you, you're providing them with the opportunities as well. And they just get to interact with, whether it's presenting to a board of outside advisors or whatever it may be, they're getting that experience, which is going to make them better professionals. And so I think when that phone call comes in, having good talking points and making sure that you sit down. I sat down with a friend of ours down here before he transacted, and said, here's the numbers that you need to make sure you have in your hip pocket and be able to speak to, and what the metrics are. And I think that's why it's so important to understand what the metrics are in your business.
Yes.
When you take that phone call, because hopefully they can succinctly better answer that than I answer your question, but in a succinct manner, be able to articulate those. So, because I can tell you, they're going to take those notes down. They're going to call you in 6 months, and they're going to want those same metrics. Right. And they're going to go to another PE firm, and they're going to say, hey, you know what? When I spoke to Scott Price last time, here was his metrics. We should call on him. And so it's important that you have sound metrics to work from every single time.
That's amazing feedback. That's a lot to absorb there. And I appreciate that. 2 more questions, Scott. Any mentors in your life, and do you care to name or give them a shout out?
It's interesting. In one of my Hall of Fame speech, I talked about mentors. I think, you don't have one person who has it all. At least I haven't met them yet. Maybe there's, I haven't met Warren Buffett and didn't get to meet, Steve Jobs or things of that nature. But so I don't think you could have, one person, at least from what I see. I think it's you learn from so many of the business individuals that you engage with. You talk about, being around, you become who you hang with to some degree as well. Being with people that have been through that experience and different experiences that you learn from, whether it's the sales side, marketing, private equity, operations, international offices, inspirational leadership, whatever it may be, that you meet with those people that you go, wow, they're really good at that, or that resonated with me. That topic was something that I didn't learn about before. And be intentional about reaching out to those mentors to gain those skills. And hell, gosh, I mean, it's been 26 years where I can probably, 20 people that I can look to of what I gained from each one of them over this time as mentors.
That's amazing. And I agree with you too. I think in my journey, there's been lots of, and each one brought a different element to it that maybe the other one wasn't what their core competency was, but it's been a collection of them. They've been inspirational and helped me have visions and ideas far beyond what I could conceptualize without being able to associate with them. Scott, last question for today is where do you get your inspiration from?
As I was preparing for this with you, it's not from a particular book or some speaker. I think, the inspiration is, I always say, I can work hard to buy anything in this world, but they don't sell time. And I want time. Time matters to me. Time is something that's we have a finite amount of, and yes. I want to make sure that I use it well. And I think what pushes me is whenever a climber, that's what we call our employees at A-LIGN, leaves here, I want them to look back at their time here and say they grew personally, professionally, and financially. And I want wherever they go to want to hire more people from A-LIGN. Yes. And so whether it's for a moment of fear or the fiduciary responsibility to our climbers and our customers, all I think about every day is how I can be better and how the company can be better and how I can lead better to make sure that the time that we interact with them is always valued by them as well. And I think about the fiduciary responsibility of them putting their trust in me. I always joke, like, how's the conversation go when we open up our Bulgaria office and the general manager goes home and tells her 8-year-old child, hey, I'm going to go work at this company A-LIGN that's never done an international office before, but right. Don't worry, there'll be food. I think about that, and that's sort of trust and belief they had in us as business owners. And you never want to let that down at all or fail them.
Yeah, no, so well spoken. And I think sometimes turnover is a part of, any company's operations. You're not going to retain everybody. Sometimes people learn so much at your organization, they find their passion somewhere else. But I think sometimes when we take the personal sting and the emotion out of how it feels when we hear the initial impact of that, I think sometimes the opportunities that maybe what we've been able to help create or foster or generate in that growth, even sometimes got to back up for a moment, just take the emotion side, and they feel complimented because it's just, it feels good to know that people develop so much that to be, a target of others. And, at some point people are entitled to change. And when you take that emotion side of that out, sometimes it's actually a huge compliment to see, your climbers climb, and whether that be on your rock, so to speak, or they find someone else's, to have that, insight of it is very respectful.
It is when someone will say somebody's leaving, they're making twice as much money, and they're saying, and they tell me the company name and companies that we've all heard of. And I go, wow, like they 3 years ago were in from, the college, and now they're making, 6 figures. It's amazing. You feel happy for them, obviously sad that they left us, but you look at what they had the opportunity to go take down and capture, and they went and did it.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely. Have the same philosophy. We've been talking with Scott Price, founder and chief executive officer of A-LIGN. Scott, you've been so inspiring today, sharing your stories of growth. If anyone wants to reach out to you after they hear or watch this, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Feel free to send me a LinkedIn invite or an email at scott.price@a-lign.com.
Scott, thank you so much again for your time on the Growth Fire podcast today. We really appreciate your time, your insights, and your candid conversation. And we wish you continued success on your journey.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Growth Fire podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.